Okay, so the last thing we have to do is you guys are going to be taking, eventually, if you look back on this next slide here, you'll have pictures of circles, and you're going to be giving me the equations for those pictures. But before we start out and get our pictures, we're just going to start out with just some basic stuff. Hey, they've given me the center, and they've given me the radius, and I need to put it into my standard form, x minus k squared. Oh my goodness, wrong. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Okay, so this is what I need to see from you guys on this. Sorry, got a little distracted. Oh, okay. So, couple ways that you can do this. One way that you can do this, I'm going to show you the longer way first, and some of you guys might be like, oh, that's dumb, and then we can do the other way. Take your standard form, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, and all you're going to do is you're going to plug in these values. So remember your center is h, k, right? So my h is -4, my 5 is k. So I'm going to plug it in, x minus -4 squared plus y minus 5 squared equals, and then we have our radius. Remember your radius here. So our radius is 5 squared. So all I did was I plugged in for my h, my k, and then my r squared. Then the only thing that I need to do to simplify this is two negatives, make that a positive, so that's x plus 4 squared plus y minus 5 squared equals, what is 5 squared? Well, 5 squared would be 25. And that's my answer. Okay? And that's kind of a little bit longer way to do this. You don't have to do it that longer way. There is a quicker way to do it. The way that I would do this is, remember, when we're talking about our center, we always switch our sign, right? When I move from a graph to the equation, I have to flip the sign. When I move from the equation to the graph, I have to flip the sign. So the other way is I can say, okay, the x is a -4, flip the sign, that's x plus 4 squared, plus, that's a positive 5, so I need a -5 squared. Okay, so you could do it that way as well. And then for your radius, remember your radius would be 5 squared, which you might do in your head, 5 squared is 25. Okay, so you can definitely just look at these and do it. Okay, and after you do it a few times, you probably will be able just to look at it. But probably to the start, you'd want to plug these things in. Okay, pause and see if you can do this for this next one here, because this next one kind of has a little trick to it. Okay, so for this one, I would have x minus 0 squared plus y minus 2 squared equals, my radius would be 1 squared. Okay, so y minus 2 squared, nothing I can do there. 1 squared, hopefully you guys remember 1 squared, 1 times 1 is 1. And then I have an x minus 0 squared. I don't want to leave that as an x minus 0. Okay, that's not simplified. What is x minus 0? Well, x minus 0 would just be x. So I end up with x squared plus y minus 2 squared equals 1. There's my answer. And that's the trick. We talked about that. When you just see an x squared by itself, that means that there was a 0 over there for the x. So that should kind of jog your memory on that. Okay? So next slide then. Now I've given you guys pictures. It's the same thing. Identify what the center and what the radius is, and then put it into the equation for your circle. Pause this video. Try this on your own. Okay, so I always like to jot this down, the x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, just so I remember it. Okay, so for this first circle over here on the left, you should have already done this on your own, so if you haven't, pause it and do it on your own. Okay, but my x would be -2, my y is a 6. So if you're starting to get the hang of this, you might just be like, okay, change the sign, that's an x plus 2 squared. If it's not ringing with you, remember that's an x minus -2. So the two negatives is what makes that a positive. So I've got an x plus 2 squared plus, I haven't really said this, but this is always a plus sign there. Okay, one thing I was hoping to get to work with you guys with later on this year is something called a hyperbole, and you can look that up if you want. But hyperboles is when that's a minus sign. So circles always have a plus sign. Sorry, I kind of got off topic there. Then I have a y minus 6 squared, because that's a positive 6, so y minus 6. Change my sign if I'm thinking about it that way. That's a positive 6. It becomes a negative 6. Okay, and then that equals my radius. So I'm going to have to figure out what my radius is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Radius of 5, so that would be 5 squared, which would give me 25. So there's the equation for that circle. Okay, next circle. It's already got my center for me. Center is 3, negative 1. So I've got x minus 3, that was a positive 3, so I need to have a negative there. And then I've got plus y minus negative 1, makes that a plus 1, or you can just remember, hey, negative 1, change that sign, makes it squared. Now for this one, the radius is going to be a little bit trickier because it doesn't have the grid marks on that, right? So I'm actually going to have to try and count with these ticks up above it. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 again. Okay, radius of 5, what's 5 squared? 5 squared is 25. Okay, backside of your homework is all this. It's got pictures of these graphs. I'm pretty sure they do all have grids. It took me like 30 minutes to figure out how to copy and make those grids show up. Okay, but that's our stuff for our circles. Again, guys, these circle ones are super important. This is definitely going to be on your ACT when you guys take those. So you want to make sure you know how to do those. They're easy points to get. Okay.